Thank you, Matt, and a special thanks to this week's meeting sponsors, Claude Neon Federal, James Adair, Moody's Jewelry, Kevin Moody, Ameritrust Companies, Harvey Rowe, Hall Estel, John O'Connor, Tom Clinda, and Daniel Ketchum. Our announcements: committee meetings following this meeting: Diversity and Inclusion in room 234, Trustees, room 233. Our Rotaract Club will host its fundraiser, Wine, Cheese, and Chocolate, tomorrow, October 25th. Guests will enjoy a great selection of wine paired with an assortment of cheeses and local chocolates. All proceeds of the event will go toward funding Rotaract's local and international charities and Rotaract's own philanthropic efforts. For more information on tickets or sponsorship, contact Rotaract President Jonathan Slay. RSVP cards are on your tables for next week's district forum. That's October 31st. Please let us know if you'll be bringing a guest. Also, there are cards on the tables for you to submit questions that you'd like to have asked to our panelists in the forum. For years, we've given Paul Harris Fellow recognition to passionate supporters of the Rotary International Foundation. It's a proud tradition that honors the memory of our founder, past Rotary International President, Paul Harris. In order to be honored as a Paul Harris Fellow, someone must contribute sums of at least $1,000 to the Rotary International Foundation's annual fund, Polio Plus, or approved Rotary International Foundation grants. Generous Rotarians in our club are giving their Rotary Foundation recognition points to members who are interested in becoming Paul Harris Fellows. So this is how it works. You give $500 to the Rotary International Foundation, and they will give you 500 recognition points to make you a Paul Harris Fellow. One more time. You give $500 to the Rotary International Foundation, they give you 500 recognition points, and you are a Paul Harris Fellow. So act now while limited points are available. It's an honor to receive Paul Harris Fellow recognition, but it's really not about the accolades. It's about what we can do in the world as caring Rotarians. For more information, contact Tina or Tommy Lynn in the Rotary office. As always, a book recognizing today's program will be presented to our partner in education school, Celia Clinton. And this week's book is, appropriately, If You Ever Want to Bring a Piano to the Beach, Don't. Bill Gates has said, and I quote, "We are achingly close to getting rid of polio, more than 99% of the way there. Finishing the job is a big challenge, but it's very doable if we keep up the effort," close quote. Members of the Rotary Club of Tulsa are among millions reaching out on World Polio Day to raise awareness, funds, and support to end polio, a vaccine-preventable disease that still threatens children in parts of the world today. Rotary has contributed more than $1.8 billion to ending polio since 1985. Please welcome past President Corey Nickerson for a special polio presentation. Corey.
Thank you, President Hannibal. I'd like to talk for a few minutes about polio, passports, and pocket change. It was the spring of 1949. A young 22-year-old wife and mother was faced with the alarming prospect of losing her entire family. She was a pastor's wife, and her 28-year-old husband and her 2.5-year-old son were both 60 miles from home in a hospital in Abilene, Texas, diagnosed with polio. The prognosis was not good. Neither was expected to live. In addition, her second son, at the age of 6 months, was fighting pneumonia. That young woman, like so many others of her generation, would not quit when circumstances seemed bleak. She made multiple road trips each week between the hospital in Abilene and her home in Haskell, where the younger son was being cared for by her sister. As weary as she was, she would not give in to what she considered the ultimate defeat. The husband and the older son both had bulbar polio, and she was told it would likely prove fatal when it reached the brain. As the story was told to me, the young pastor had a near-death experience and remembered walking up a massive marble staircase toward the most brilliant and peaceful light he had ever seen when he was suddenly back in his hospital bed. Doctors were astounded when, by nothing short of a miracle, both the young pastor and the 2.5-year-old son survived. That pastor was my dad. That courageous young woman was my mom. Doctors told her that I would live with the right side of my face paralyzed for the rest of my life. I would never smile with the right side of my mouth. I would be required to manually close my right eye when it was time to sleep. That eye would never blink or wink. Once again, my mother, against all practicality, stood up to the odds and began looking for the next miracle. She found Dr. Hazel Robinson in our little town of Haskell, Texas. Over the course of the next 6 months, that chiropractic angel eliminated every effect of the paralysis that I was supposed to carry for the rest of my life. I could have been another story like so many others who lived and died in iron lungs over the course of 60 years, but I was not. From the time I was old enough to understand my own story, I have considered every single day of my life as a miracle that required me to find ways to give back. I've never had to suffer through or even encounter the residual effects of polio until I began traveling overseas as an adult and saw the devastation that so many of the world's people endure. As a young polio survivor, all I had to do was run across the yard, and I believed in miracles. My ability to breathe outside of an iron lung was a miracle. Every time I smiled with both sides of my mouth, I knew what a miracle felt like. And to this day, if I pass you in a crowded room or hallway, I may not say anything, I might not wave, but if I smile and wink at you, I guarantee you I'm relishing my miracle. In 1985, when Rotary International took on the task of eradicating polio from the world, new cases were being reported at an average rate of more than 1,000 a day. Today, that number has dropped to 20 new cases of wild polio virus since January the 1st in 2 countries. Nigeria has not yet reported a single case for 2018. That's incredible progress over the past 33 years, but we're not done yet. There are about 175 million U.S. passports in use today. So how many millions of passports do you suppose are carried around the world? How many of those passports are issued to citizens of Nigeria, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, where polio is still listed as endemic? You see, polio virus has an incubation period of 3 to 35 days after exposure. So, what if a child in a polio endemic country were exposed to polio last Wednesday while we were in our Rotary meeting? What if that child boarded a plane with her parents bound for Dallas on Monday before exhibiting any signs of polio? What if that child arrived in Dallas yesterday, still exhibiting no symptoms? Between now and the day before Thanksgiving, could that child be enrolled in a school or a daycare center in Tulsa playing with your child or grandchild when the symptoms first appear? And how many other children might be exposed before health services or the CDC discovered that we had a polio outbreak? Fortunately, after nearly 50 years, polio immunization is still required for any child entering school in all 50 states. Unfortunately, no requirement is ever 100% effective in a society where you can get around things. Of the millions of passports around the world, it only takes one to deliver a case of polio virus back into a society that has been polio-free for decades. Internet stats show that there are close to 107,000 commercial airline flights every day in 2018, and 87,000 of them are U.S. flights. Any single one of them could become a transporter of the polio virus if we fail to get the disease eradicated. A few years ago, Rotary International asked each Rotary Club in the world to contribute $1,000 a year to the Polio Plus campaign. With 33,000 clubs in the world, that would have netted $33 million. However, if each Rotarian would take responsibility for giving $100 a year to Polio Plus around the world, that would raise $120 million a year. $100 a year translates to what you see on the screen, 28 cents a day. That's the sales tax on a $3.29 transaction. The point is, you're not going to miss 28 cents a day, and you're not going to miss $100 a year. Probably wouldn't miss twice that much. Eradicating the disease of polio is Rotary International's #1 priority. The RI website states, as long as polio threatens even one child anywhere in the world, children everywhere remain at risk. The stakes are that high. Since Rotary became involved, we've moved from 365,000 new cases a year to 20 cases a year. If the Polio Plus campaign were a football game, the ball would be less than a half inch from the goal line. But the game is not over until we push polio back across the existence line. Even when we reach 0 cases a year, we have to continue the inoculation of every new child in every corner of the globe for several years. As an incredibly blessed polio survivor, I'm asking for your personal help in eradicating a disease from the face of the planet, a disease that we haven't seen in this country for nearly 50 years, or in the Western Hemisphere since 1994. My wife gave me the best definition for a Rotarian that I've ever heard. She says a Rotarian is an overflowing, compassionate heart with rolled up sleeves. I appreciate you allowing me the time to visit with you today. As Joseph Bias comes to sing You'll Never Walk Alone, please understand that millions of families are trusting that Rotary will continue to roll up its sleeves and to walk with them as we work to protect the children.
When you walk through a storm, hold your head up high and don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and the sweet silver song of a lark. Walk on through the wind, walk on through the rain, though your dreams be tossed and blown. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never
Thank you. Now it's time to meet our Rotarian of the day. He is Jeff Johnson. He is a third-generation Rotarian. He's been an independent insurance agent for 42 years, a husband for 37 years. He's a proud father of 3 and grandfather of 2, and he hopes to be a grandfather of more grandchildren. He joined our club in 1983. He's a Paul Harris Fellow, an MSNI Ambassador, a Club Foundation Fellow, and he has chaired numerous committees. Please help me welcome fellow Rotarian, Jeff Johnson. Jeff.
From some pictures that I understand are going to be on the screens here in just a moment, you'll know that our speaker today is a supporter of the Polio Plus campaign. In fact, she joined us. We're hosting her. She put on a master class at TU yesterday and joined us Sunday night. And out of the blue, she started talking about Rotary's great project. And not surprisingly, she is a contributor to the campaign. Our speaker and performer today is truly a world-class pianist. This will be evident to all of you in a few minutes. Amazingly, there are at least 3 other world-class musicians in the room today who I want to thank for developing their talent and loving others by sharing their music. The first is our own Joseph Bias. As an 8th grader, I watched Joseph sing on TV at Martin Luther King's funeral service. I called Mom into the room to hear this black man singing. He subsequently sang opera worldwide before blessing us here in Tulsa. Now, it wasn't until I was almost 50 years old at a fireside meeting, I'd known Joseph as a friend for several years, that someone else told me that he had been asked to speak at Martin Luther King's funeral. That was amazing. The next is my guest, Cristiana's United States manager, Mr. Tom Price, who also manages Dr. Roger Price and many other world-class musicians. Before taking on this career, he too was world-renowned as a concert pianist, performing under his native Armenian name, Tikran Atamian. Google him. You'll be amazed. Lastly, I want to recognize my good friend, Dr. Roger Price, who still performs around the world, but is also a composer and heads the piano department at the University of Tulsa. And I thank Roger for bringing Cristiana to the university for a performance and masterclass a year ago and introducing her to Connie and me. Last year, we were able to obtain Carnegie Hall tickets to watch Cristiana's 11th consecutive sellout performance in New York City. You can go online and read about this and her other remarkable musical accomplishments and awards, but I want you to know this morning what you may glean already from her willingness to speak to our Rotary Club. This is the passion and love that she brings to her playing and everything else that she does. Somehow, in spite of the hours and hours required to practice and manage a concert piano career, she's been able to use her musical gifts to positively impact our world. She is a little embarrassed that she has received so many awards that she can't remember them all. There are 3 of such recognitions, though, that I want to mention today. One was from the United Nations for her contributions to world peace. A second was awarded her by the President of Italy for her contribution to Italy for founding and operating the Nania Festival. She has operated this art festival for 7 years. It annually exposes 300 to 400 young people to music over 3 weeks in the summer and involves nearly 50 teachers and over 50 performances. A third award is one of the highest awards to be given in Italy when warranted to a person who has contributed greatly to the world. Cristiana received this award in 2013. An earlier recipient of this award was Mother Teresa. We are truly blessed to have her with us today, so please help me in welcoming Cristiana Pegoraro.
Beautiful presentation. Well, it is my pleasure to be with you today. It's a wonderful crowd, so thank you for this invitation. I know that I'm supposed to talk and play. They gave me 35 minutes. I don't know if I'm going to make it because we Italians like to talk a lot, so I'll try to be concise. And well, I'm here to tell you a little bit about my life, my career, what it means to be a concert pianist. Now, I was born in Italy. Of course, you must have detected that from my accent. Then, when I was 4 years old, I was in kindergarten, and I started playing the piano. We had a wonderful teacher there, and I loved it right away. So it was really no choice for me, but just continue doing it. So I remember when I was about 5, my mom asked me if I wanted to take piano lessons, and I said, yes, of course. Now, I'm not coming from a musical family. My parents have different jobs, but I would say they were smart enough to encourage me to reach my dreams. And so, I started studying, and I loved it really very, very much. I remember that they had to take me out of the piano because I was practicing too much, accordingly, from what my parents says. They would say, well, go and play with the other kids. But I was playing with the piano, so that was really all I wanted to do. And so when I was 10 years old, I entered the conservatory, and I studied in Italy until I was 16. Now, at 10 years old, I also started playing serious concerts. My debut was in Sicily when I was 10, and right then I really knew that I wanted to be a concert pianist. So in a way, it has been easy to continue this career because I really didn't have much of a choice. I knew that this was something that I wanted to do. And then, I come from a small town in Italy. That's Terni. Terni is in Umbria. Umbria is the center of Italy. And, I was very good. I was actually very, very good in Terni. But Terni was a small town. And so I needed to confront myself with other levels, other people, other students, other teachers. And then I decided that after my diploma, when I was 16, it was time to leave. And so I did. I went to study in Salzburg at the Mozarteum. Now, the Mozarteum is one of the best schools in the world for classical music. And I happened to study there with the best teacher of that school. So it was really tough. It was tough because I had in my class students who were at least 10 years older than me, already winners of major competitions. And I was the little one, and I was, trying to catch up. And it was good in a way because I had a challenge, and I love challenges. So, I started studying very, very hard. And I remember, sometimes Saturday and Sundays, we would still have lessons in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, every single Sunday or Saturday. But it was good because I got a very good training. And also I started understanding about myself, like the sacrifice that you have to do to reach your goals. Because until I was in Italy, as I said, everything was kind of easy. I was good, that was enough, and I was little. But then when you grow up, you need to face an international level, so you need to grow. You need to become better. You need to perfect yourself. And to perfect yourself, talent is not enough. Talent is the majority of, what it takes to get there. But then you have to work very hard. And not only, you have to practice. Practice, yes, is good, but mainly you have to understand in order not to practice 10 hours a day, because then, you go on and you have less and less time. So it's important as an artist to put in your performances what you learn from life. And life means living, so not being locked in a room and practice. So at least this is my idea. I never really practiced a lot unless I had, some very, very important projects that required. I remember, in 2009, I started working on the 32 Beethoven sonatas, and I'm the first Italian to have played 32 sonatas in concerts and to have done that. And in order to do that, I had to learn the whole thing in less than a year, and this is a lot of work, and I was practicing 8-9 hours every single day. So sometimes you have to do what you have to do. But as I say, I like to learn more from life. And I bless this career for taking me to places that otherwise I wouldn't know, I wouldn't go to. And that means that I meet other people, I know other cultures, I see different beauties. And sometimes it's also bad experiences, you know, because life is a little bit of everything. So that goes into your being, who you are. And I think that the more we can enrich ourselves in life, the more we can give as human beings, and in my case, also as an artist. So, you know, like, I remember those hard years in Salzburg. It was tough because I'm an only child. I left my parents when I was 16. I went to this foreign country. I didn't know a word of German. And I was surrounded by a different culture, much colder. You know, we Italians are very warm. I remember, you know, like walking on the street, and I was a pretty chick, you know, when I was 16, so the boys would look at me like that. And then in Salzburg, nobody cared. Like, nobody looked at me, nobody talked to me. It was like, is this wrong? There is something wrong with me? No, it was just a different culture. So I say that, of course, sometimes it was tough because I was alone, I was lonely, but I had a piano and I was there to learn. So that was my main focus. And then after that, I went to Berlin to change city. Berlin is still a beautiful city, bigger than Salzburg, more international. But then, you know, I started getting tired of Europe. And I believe that as an artist, you always have to find challenges, new things to discover. So for a series of coincidences, that was really kind of funny, you know, I won a competition to go to another competition. Actually, they picked 20 pianists from all over the world, and I was one of those 20s, and they sent us to Australia for the real competition. And in that competition, I met again a person, another pianist, whom I've met years earlier, and I didn't like this guy at all. So anyway, we were on the same plane from Frankfurt to Sydney, and you know, it takes 23 hours to get there. So it was quite a long trip. We started talking again, and slowly, you know, we fell in love, and we fell in love in Sydney, and I thought, well, you know, like, I need to change my life, I need to change teachers, and I asked him, so, I mean, would you recommend as a teacher? He was very, very good, you know, older than me, and he said, well, you know, I studied in New York with a very important teacher, very good one, she's the best, Russian woman, great Russian school, and I said, well, you know what, I'll go to New York. Now, imagine my poor parents, you know, because they were already kind of, you know, used to my craziness of doing crazy things, of traveling on my own. I started taking planes on my own when I was 14, you know, so, you know. But they must have been angels, you know, because I remember one day I went home and I said, Mom, Dad, I'm going to New York. And he was like, oh, what? New York? You know, New York is far from Italy. And I was probably 21 or 22. So, but they were good because they let me go. And again, like, it was very tough at the beginning, a new place, new everything, new teacher. That means that they kind of erase what you have done up to that point to build new, because they have to give you their technique, their skills. So you have to clean your brain and change your way of playing. And that's not easy, believe me. And I've done this, you know, 2 or 3 times during my career. And it takes a while. So of course, like, there are some discouragements too. And you know, like, I remember I was playing difficult pieces, traveling the world, and then I started playing, you know, simple Bach inventions or stuff like that, which, you know, takes you back, but it takes you back to fly higher the next time. So anyway, New York, I loved it. I mean, how you cannot love New York, no, right? So, and that's one of my homes, actually, because I I've been there for many, many years already. And New York opened up my vision, not only music-wise, because I really love my teacher and I still go to her sometimes, but, and that was really an improvement in my piano playing and also in thinking and also in career. And of course, New York opens up a lot of doors if you really want to do things, because it's a tough city, but if you're tough enough, you get your space. And so that's how I started a more international career. And of course, this is what I'm doing right now. And I enjoy it very, very much for the reasons I told you. And because ultimately it makes me grow as a human being. And I think that if I'm richer inside, I can give more to the audience who is listening to me. So, well, I'm very happy to be here, and I know that, well, I'm looking at the clock right there. Did I talk enough? Or maybe not so much. Anyway, maybe I tell you a few more things. You grow older, we all do, and at a certain point in life, you start looking back and you say, well, I got a lot, now I want to give a lot, and I want to give to young students, to young musicians, to young people who have a dream, which is so important in our society, to have dreams. And so 7 years ago, I founded a festival in my region, in Umbria, in Narni. It's called the Narnia Festival. Narnia is the Latin name of Narni, so when you read Chronicles of Narnia, that's the place, and as I used to say, it's a magic place that really exists. So Narnia exists in the world, and that's where I founded this festival with few, goals. One is, of course, to have students from all over the world, not only musicians, but also in opera, in ballet, in Italian language and culture. We even have programs for small children to get there and to work with very, very good teachers, because I believe that you have to get a very good education right at the beginning and encourage the dreams, So that was one purpose, and of course we host a lot of concerts. It's about 50 concerts. That happens in July, in the second, third, and fourth week in July. And so students get a lot of possibilities to play in front of an audience, which is something that is missing in school, because we learn very much how to manage an instrument, but then when you are on stage, it's a different story. You have to deal with your fears, with your projecting things. You have to learn, so you have to be on stage. And that's part of the training that we give at the festival. And then, of course, there is the landscape. Narni is this beautiful medieval village on top of the hills, and it's like being in a fairy tale. And Umbria is a very beautiful region. So we offer a lot of tours to everybody who comes to the festival to know more about our region and get inspired. And we host, of course, the concerts all over our region. So it's an incentive more to get the culture of the place and get a full experience. These programs are open also to grown-ups who don't play, because we have a culture and leisure program. So if you happen to be in Italy sometime, in July, remember Narnia Festival, you can check our website, and we have a lot of programs like culinary courses, wine tasting, and we have lectures on medieval history and architecture, so they take you around to know the place. It's really very beautiful, and then you get access to all the concerts that we host during the time. So this is something that I'm proud of, because, as I say, I want to leave a legacy, and hopefully, like what I leave with the students and people who come to us, it's an inspiration, which ultimately is so important in life. So to have dreams and be inspired to reach them. Sometimes it's difficult, but that's good too, because if everything would be very easy, there will not be the fun, to do that. So, and I hope to continue doing all this, and hopefully bringing joy, because, like sharing music is dead unless there are interpreters who put it, alive. And the music is a piece of paper, so our duty is just to make it become alive and bringing it to you bringing it to you with our vision, with our interpretation. So, of course, like, it's probably not how the composers really intended it, but it's also good because we have the freedom to offer our personality through the music that we are playing. And I guess that until there are interpreters and an audience on the other side, music and the arts will never die. So it's important that we all support the arts, because it's through us supporting them that we can become a better generation, I guess, and better people, and always thinking about, you know, friendship and peace. That is really very, very important, especially nowadays. So this is my wish that, you know, I can contribute a little bit in doing that. So having said that, well, of course, I'm here to play too. And this is what I really love to do, you know, because ultimately I do it with joy. And so I was thinking to play for you an Italian piece. I'm Italian. We're talking about Gioachino Rossini. Rossini was one of the most famous opera composers of Italy. And this year, we celebrate the 150th anniversary of his death. So it's a big Rossini year, especially in Italy. So for this purpose, I released a new CD for the first time, making my own transcriptions of his famous overtures for piano, you know? So it's not orchestra, but it's piano. And I'm going to play for you now the overture to The Barber of Seville, which is one of my favorite, absolute favorite operas, you know? It's a very funny opera. This is the style of Rossini. Rossini used to write a lot of opera buffa, funny operas with funny stories and pretty much alive characters. Now, imagine that Gioachino Rossini was only 23 years old when he composed this opera, and he composed it in only 3 weeks. The impresario of Teatro Argentina in Rome asked him to write a new opera based on a story, on a comedy by Beaumarchais, and this was The Barber of Seville, which was used already by other famous composers such as Mozart. Mozart wrote The Marriage of Figaro. It's the same story. And then there was also a very old but famous composer in Italy, Giovanni Paisiello. Paisiello wrote A Barber of Seville before Rossini. So when Rossini went to premiere his opera, actually it was a huge fiasco. Now, I mean, possible that the people didn't realize the beauty of this opera. Well, there are some reasons behind this fiasco. First of all, as I said, you know, all the sustainers of Giovanni Paisiello went there to boo the opera because it was written by an unknown young composer. So, you know, who is this to dare write in the same opera? Then in Rome, there was another theater, a very famous one, Teatro Valle, and Teatro Valle was competing with Teatro Argentina all the time. So all the sustainers of Teatro Valle went to boo the opera because it was premiered at a competing theater. And then, you know, like during the performance, a character of the opera, the Count of Almaviva, singing a serenade to his beloved Rosina and accompanying himself with a guitar, he breaks a string in this guitar. So the audience starts laughing. And after a while, another character, Don Basilio, walking on stage, he tripped and fell. So again, like, it started laughing more and more. And towards the end, they say that even a black cat started walking around on stage. And black cat means bad luck in Italy. So, you know, like, it ended up in a ridiculous way. But we must say that at that time, they used to plan fiascos. What does it mean? It means that, for example, in an opera, they had a beautiful aria sang by a beautiful voice. Well, they would plan to whistle right after the end of this aria, and whistling in Italy is bad, so that the audience would clap more, just, you know, to contrast that whistling. So apparently the impresario of Teatro Argentina planned this huge fiasco for The Barber, but he died 4 days before the premiere. So everything, you know, just got out of control, and this was really like one of the biggest fiascos ever in the history of opera. Of course, it took a very, very short time for the people to understand how beautiful it was, and of course, it was a huge success, and it's one of the most played operas everywhere in the world. So it's my pleasure now to present you the overture, which is the beginning of the opera. It's just orchestra, but in my own transcription for piano. Enjoy. Well, I'm still looking at the clock. I don't know, because you see, Italians like to improvise, and we are very, very flexible with time, but that was something that I had to learn being in Germany, in Austria, you know. I mean, the bus coming 8:03. I was like 8:03 and 2 seconds, and I would see the bus, you know, okay, I missed the bus. So in Italy, the bus never comes, so it's a different attitude. So, since we are here to enjoy and to have fun, I'll be very honest with you. I can play another piece for about 7 minutes, or I can play 2 pieces for about 12 minutes, but I know that we will go over time if I do the second option. So, would you like to stay longer? Yeah, we're okay. You see, I'm flexible. So, okay. I want to tell you about another passion of mine. I love tango. And this came, of course, by being in New York. You get exposed to different cultures, and I met a lot of Argentinian people. And I got pretty much involved with Cuban music and South American music, especially Argentinian music, and especially the tango. I even started learning to dance tango because, you know, like I was studying tango and I wanted just to go to the roots of it. So I took lessons and I enjoy dancing tango too. So anyway, at a certain point of my life, I got very interested in Piazzolla's music. Astor Piazzolla was the most important tango composer of last century. He was born in Mar del Plata in Argentina in 1921 and grew up in the Bronx in New York. And later on, he went to study composition in Paris. And while he was in Paris, his teacher, a very famous teacher, encouraged him to start writing music from his home country. So Piazzolla did something really beautiful. He took the dance music of Buenos Aires, the tango, and he mixed it with elements of classical music and jazz, creating unique forms. So the tango with Piazzolla is not dance music anymore, but it becomes a much more elevated kind of music. It becomes music for concert halls. So now, since I love to dance tango, and I love to dance it also at the keyboard, I made a lot of transcriptions for piano of his music because he never wrote anything for solo piano, only for ensemble. And so I wanted to play for you a tango that I like very much. This is called Ciao Paris. It's a very intense, very dramatic tango, just to bring you the flavor of South America here in Tulsa today. And now I wanted to bring you something mine. Now, beside playing, I like to compose. I don't like to call myself a composer. Actually, what I write is very spontaneous, and I get inspired by life, by nature, most of the time to write my composition. This one is called The Wind and the Sea, and I love to sail, and I remember that one day I was on a boat, and I started looking at how the wind was playing with the water, and so I got inspired to write this piece. Now, I imagined the sea to be a man and the wind to be a woman. So it's a love story, full of passion, of course, because I'm Italian, so hopefully I write passionate music. So after a short introduction, you will hear the sea singing at first. It sings in a darker color, like I wanted to describe the dark blue of my Mediterranean Sea. Then there is the woman, the wind, this more ethereal element that starts coming in and moving the wave slowly at first. In the middle part of the composition, we have the sea singing again. And this time it's a sad song because the wind is not there. So it's a song full of memories and nostalgia. But then the wind comes back, and this time will stir the water more and more until finishing in a big storm, like to say that in nature, and especially between men and women, storms are necessary. The wind and the sea.
Just one three-letter word. Wow. Just wow. What a wonderful presentation, Cristiana. Thank you for sharing your incredible talent and also your insights on artistry. I think Jeff has a special presentation for you.
Oh, thank you.
Fabulous, fabulous. So I want to point out that Cristiana has some CDs available for purchase. She'll be happy to autograph them for you, so pick up one after we close out here today. It's been a really good day, I'd say. So keep that momentum going as we adjourn and we go our separate ways. Go in peace.